Hi, I'm here today to give away one prize and answer 1,000 questions. And because there's only one prize and a million questions, I'm gonna do the prize first. So the winner of the giveaway is the girl who read. Because you won, I will answer your question first. So the question that the girl who read asked for my giveaway was, what is your favorite tea on your shop, so that I know which one to buy? My favorite tea from the shop that is actually out at the moment is probably the Shire. It's apple and cinnamon and green tea, and it's really cozy and nice to drink when you just feel like relaxing. So now I'll answer all of the rest of the questions, and I've separated all of the questions into categories of sorts, starting with get to know me questions. Have you lived anywhere else apart from Melbourne? Yes, I grew up in a town called Casterton, which is in Victoria in Australia, and then I lived in India for half a year before moving to Melbourne to study university. What did you take at university? I studied linguistics. What is the cheesiest pickup line you can think of? Is that a hardcover, or are you just pleased to see me? Can you tell us an awkward first story? Like the first time you had to write a check, or the first time you had to fill out a government form? Let me tell you a little story about the first time that I ever read Harry Potter. First time I read Harry Potter, I was in early primary school, like maybe 7 or 8 at the most. I legit was reading the first book and Severus Snape turned up. So J.K. Rowling described Severus Snape for us, and she described him as like sallow-skinned, thin-faced, and with a hooked nose. 7 or 8-year-old me, with my 7 or 8-year-old logic, read that he had a hooked nose and was like, oh, that must be like the same thing as Captain Hook's hooked hand. So I legit pictured Severus Snape as a man with a hook for a nose right up until I saw the first movie like several years later. Do you have any pets? And if so, what is your favorite book that reminds you of your pet? I do have a pet. She only ever comes near me if I have food. I don't really know what book would remind me of her, but I can tell you that she's a Slytherin. Nom 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 nom. What is your guilty pleasure? Milo. How do you deal with stress, or how do you unwind? I rewatch movies that I know I love, like Robin Hood, Men in Tights. I drink a cup of tea. I have a warm shower. Are you a Ravenclaw? You tell me. If you were not in Ravenclaw, which house would you be in? My second biggest house is Hufflepuff, and I'm proud of that. What is your favorite video game to play? I am terrible at video games. Hand, brain, control doesn't work. What is your favorite animal? I think Lola would kill me if I said anything but rabbit. What is your favorite snack food? Milo. What is your favorite thing about yourself? My ability to find a positive thing to say about most things, whether it's a book or a person or something that's happening in my life. I can usually find something positive to say about it, unless it's Trump. What is your favorite scent? What is your favorite quote? I have way too many favorite quotes to be able to pick just one, but I will pick a random quote from my favorite quote journal for you. Life is infinitely stranger than anything which the mind of man could invent. So the second category was questions that are BookTube related in some way. How did you decide to start a BookTube channel? I discovered BookTube because I always used to browse through the bookish section of websites like Bustle and BuzzFeed, and one day someone wrote an article about BookTube, which was the first I'd ever heard of it. And so from then I immediately started watching, and a few months later I decided to jump in and join in. What inspires you to make videos and share your knowledge with the world? I don't really feel like I have much knowledge to share, so first of all, thank you, that's really flattering. Secondly, this kind of grew as an extension from my love of studying literature in university and high school and looking deeply into books. Who is the person from the farthest or most random country that you've met through your channel? I guess the country that's like the furthest away from me has got to be Finland, and I do have a couple of friends on BookTube from Finland. Speaking of which, Finland is like the first country I ever decided that I wanted to travel to, thanks to the Monty Python song.
Finland, 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 the country where I want to be.
How do you manage to juggle your time between work, BookTube, Instagram, and starting your own tea company? First, I accepted stress-induced panic attacks as a regular part of my lifestyle because they are just unavoidable at the moment. Second, if I get home and I sit down on the couch, that whole evening is a write-off. If I keep the ball rolling the moment that I get home, I get a lot more done. Thirdly, I use my bullet journal, which is conveniently divided into sections depending on which particular area of life I need to do tasks for, which is lucky because I have so much going on at the moment that I'm I'm extremely scatterbrained and there's no way I would remember what I needed to do without this thing. Like, this is my brain. My brain isn't in here anymore. It's here. Do you have any advice for someone who wants to read more but can't seem to find the time to do it? I don't think I'm necessarily the best person to give advice about this question because I don't exactly read a lot. But the one thing that has helped me bring more reading into my life is to actually schedule it into my routine. And a lot of people kind of get really up in arms about this and they don't want to do that. Oh, if reading is something that's really important to me, I shouldn't have to schedule it. Scheduling it's gonna make it feel like a chore. But here are two things to think about before you start making that argument. Firstly, we only have so many hours in a day and we can't do everything that we want to, so we have to prioritize what we're gonna do with that time. And secondly, scheduling is not about chores. It is about choosing the things that have the highest priority to you and setting aside time to do those things that are a priority to you. I am just starting to read books and I'm hoping to find some insight on how to read more efficiently and learn more from what you read. If you're talking about reading critically, like classics and analyzing what's going on in the books, the one thing that really helps when you're just getting started is actually looking up what the themes are that you're supposed to be looking for first. Doesn't mean that you're going to get spoilers, it just means that you're going to have a bit of an idea of what kind of ideas and themes and things you're supposed to be looking for when you're reading. Could you do a spoilery discussion on Lord of the Rings on your channel, and if so, when do you think that might happen? I would absolutely love to, of course. If I wanted to do it properly, it would take me a while to figure out exactly what I want to do and how I want to do the series justice, but maybe by the end of the year. If you had to change your YouTube channel to any content that wasn't books related, what would it be and why? If I couldn't have a book related channel, it would be a music related channel because singing is actually a bigger passion for me than reading. Do you stockpile your photos for Instagram or do you take new ones every day? I definitely stockpile. Everything I do is stockpiled. All my videos are stockpiled, all my photos are stockpiled. Third category is novelty co-related. What made you want to start a bookish tea company? I've always wanted to do something related to tea because I genuinely really like tea, and then once I started BookTube and saw how many people in the community were also doing book related things like candles and bookmarks, I figured out that I could do the same thing with tea. What has been the hardest part of working on your new tea company? Time management, because I do actually work a full-time job, so any tea related stuff that I do has to be outside the hours of 9 to 5 on Monday to Friday. How do you blend your own tea? Step 1. Pick a combination of flavors or ingredients that you think would taste nice together. Step 2. Blend a small mini batch of those ingredients together and write down the amounts that you have just put into your mini blend for future records. Step 3. Taste test it to see whether it tastes like what you imagined. If it doesn't taste right, then adjust the ingredients in your mini blend and record the new ingredient amounts down for future reference. Repeat the last 2 steps until you have something that tastes delicious and a recipe to go with it. What is your absolute favorite tea to drink while reading? It depends on my mood. Mostly it's Earl Grey, especially during the colder months, but during summer months I'll usually go for something like a green tea or a rooibos tea. Blend an imaginary tea for a bookish character that isn't on your website yet. This is actually a tea I'm about to start working on in the next couple of weeks, and that is for the Queen of Hearts from Alice in Wonderland, inspired by Lamingtons, which is an Australian dessert, black tea, chocolate, coconut, and strawberry. If you could only have 3 teas, which 3 would you pick? I would pick rooibos because it is my favorite, peppermint and lavender for sleepy time, and Earl Grey for reading. How did you get into making prints and bookmarks? My friend and I are actually working on starting a book subscription box, and I started designing bookmarks and prints to see if I could design them myself for the box rather than having to find an illustrator to do them for us. And the final and largest category is all questions book related. At what age did you get into reading? You tell me. Do you know how many books you've read in your entire life? Not even a little bit. I don't even know how many books I've read before I got Goodreads. What is the first book that you remember reading? The first book that I remember reading is obviously going to be Harry Potter. What was your favorite childhood book? Again, Harry Potter. What is your all-time favorite book? Lord of the Rings, Jane Eyre, or Alice in Wonderland? What book series do you reread the most? If this is like a lifelong count, that answer would be Harry Potter. If it is a count of just reread since I've been an adult, it would be the Stephanie Plum series. What has been your favorite book of the year? Girl, you know what my favorite book of the year is. It's Homegoing. How would you fan cast your favorite book of the year? For this, I'm actually going to choose my second favorite book of the year, which is A Court of Mist and Fury. I would fan cast myself as Feyre. Christopher Manson as Tamlin. This guy, I don't know who he is, but I think he's gorgeous, as Lucian. Tom Hiddleston as Reese. Emilia Clarke as Moore. Michelle Huisman as Cassian. David Tennant as Azriel. Karen Fukuhara as Amran. Sophie Turner as Nesta. Anna Sophia Robb as Elaine. Natalie Dormer as Ayenthi. And Mads Mikkelsen as King Hybern. What is your favorite genre? I don't really have a favorite genre. I'll read most things quite happily. What is a genre of book that you prefer not to read? A book that I tend to prefer not to read is like trashy or superficial romance novels, because they tend to have like tropes and ideals on life that I find particularly harmful and that I really don't agree with. Do you like classics? If so, what is your favorite classic book? Yes, I love classics. 3 of my favorite classics would be Jane Eyre, The Handmaid's Tale, and 100 Years of Solitude. What classic is highest up on your to-read list? For now, I'm gonna pick A Room of One's Own, because I'm actually halfway through it, and I've been halfway through it for like 3 months now, even though it's only like 60 pages long. It shouldn't have taken me this long to read it. What book on your TBR are you most excited to read? At the moment, I am most excited to read Murder on the Orient Express, because I love Agatha Christie, but for some weird reason I have never read this book before. In which story or book would you like to wander around for a day? Either Wonderland from Alice in Wonderland, Middle-earth from Lord of the Rings, or Prythian from A Court of Thorns and Roses. If you could live as a character in a book world, who would you be? Either Alice from Alice in Wonderland, Feyre from A Court of Thorns and Roses, or Gandalf from Lord of the Rings. Who is your favorite fictional character and what do you love about them? Jane Eyre from Jane Eyre, because she is feisty and intelligent, and she's not afraid to be independent and to stand up for what she believes in. Shut up, Lola. A character that you hated at first but then fell in love with. Reese from A Court of Thorns and Roses. If you were in a life and death situation and you got one sneaky phone call to call your most reliable character to come save you, who would you call? Not Gandalf, obviously. If you could save only one person from your favorite book, who would it be and why? Well, my all-time favorite book is Lord of the Rings, and none of the characters that I care about in that book need saving, so... If you could marry any fictional character, who would it be and why? Reese from A Court of Thorns and Roses, because he is the feminist hero that I never knew I needed. What book or book character do you relate to the most? This one is always going to be Hermione, because growing up as a little girl, I was very much like Hermione. I was like obnoxious and over smart and nerdy and like total teacher's pet. Plus, a lot of people used to say that I looked like Hermione, especially in the earlier movies when she actually had frizzy hair. Like, that's actually what I looked like. If you have children in the future, what would be the first book that you read to them? This question is so great that I actually want to make an entire video answering this, because like I came up with so many ideas that I can't even pick one book. But I guess if it's like the first book I read to them, it would have to be a picture book, so it would probably be like The Bears in the Night. Like, that is so fun to read to kids. Who are some of your auto-buy authors? The main one that I can think of is Margaret Atwood. Do you prefer standalones or series, and why? I tend to prefer standalones because like if I read a series and I like the first book but then like I hate the second book, I don't really know how to rate that series overall. Like, that confuses me and I like to be able to rate things. What book ending surprised you the most? The Blind Assassin. Do you judge a book by its cover, and if so, what have been some disappointments? Yes, of course I do. Like, who doesn't? Some disappointments would be Heartless and The Alchemist. Have you ever read a second or a third part of a saga without realizing that it was supposed to be part of a series? I don't think so. Who is the person whose book advice you will always take? My mother. She has excellent taste in books. What is your absolute all-time favorite line from a novel and why? Again, it's very hard for me to pick just one favorite quote, so I'm going to pick another random one from my random book of quotes. Ignoring isn't the same as ignorance. You have to work at it. If you could sit down and talk to one author, who would it be and what would you ask them? I would love to be able to sit down with Stephen Fry, because he just seems like an absolutely fascinating man. And I don't really know what I'd ask him. I'd probably just sit there and ask him everything I could possibly think of. If you could sit down with any 3 authors, who would they be and what teas would you drink with them? Stephen Fry again, J.K. Rowling and Margaret Atwood, and I'm guessing we'd probably end up drinking Earl Grey. Do you listen to music while you read? Do you create music playlists to match the books that you read? I don't actually listen to music while I read, but I do make playlists to match the books once I've read them. Do you read the book before the movie or after? Before. Always, always, always always before. What is a weird habit that you have while reading, if you have one? I always actually play with my hair when I'm reading, and so I've got like all these broken bits of hair. Do you prefer real book, Kindle, or audiobook? I prefer real books, but I have a growing appreciation for ebooks, especially because of how much they've helped me increase my reading over the last year. If Harry Potter wasn't the chosen one, who would be the chosen one? Neville, of course. He's my precious baby cinnamon roll who is gonna save the world. Get a random book, go to a random page, go to the word that is the same number as the age you are, and tell us some of your favorite things starting with each letter of that word. The word is he. Favorite things starting with the letter H. I can't even think of anything starting with the letter H, let alone my favorite thing starting with the letter H. Hairspray, the movie. Favorite thing starting with the letter E. Elephants. Elephants are very cute. If you wrote a YA novel about a magic tea maker, what would their name be and what teas would they specialize in? Their name would be Tea Adora, and they would specialize in, I don't know, potion teas. Clearly they specialize in making magic teas, right? If you could jump into only one book, what book would it be? What character would it be? Who would you end up with? What would you change? And who would you save? Court of Thorns and Roses, Feyre, Reese, all of the final book, and the surreal. And that is the end of my overwhelmingly long Q&A. I hope that this wasn't too long and boring for you. I did have a lot of fun answering the questions, but I understand that Q&As are very long videos. Congratulations to the girl who read, who won my giveaway. Thank you so much for 1,000 subscribers. I am just absolutely blown away still by that, like just overwhelmed. I will see you on some other video very shortly, I am sure. And until then, as always, stay classic.
Sit there and count your fingers.